Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Pope Metallicus, and welcome back to Rock and Roll Religion, where we've got a bit of an interesting one today. I already covered Overkill's latest album in their previous video, and I wanted to give you guys some context for that. So showing where they are and then where they started. So we're going to cover their early material today, and these guys are a great example of an East Coast thrash band that is stuck around. I know the Bay Area gets all of the love and all of the attention, but there's some
We
East
do.
Coast bands that can absolutely throw down. And here to
Overkill.
help me talk about all that is our friend the Sentinel, who is a Bay Area thrash guy.
I
So
am a, I am the Bay Area thrash guy. I'm like the last man standing.
yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much.
So
Just
that's all.
trying.
That's always been a major, like, it was funny, like in the 80s you had the Bay Area versus East Coast thrash scene, and then the same kind of war erupted in rap in the 90s.
Exactly, man. It's like these. You're loyal to the soil.
Hell
You
yeah,
are.
man.
It's good old fashioned tribalism. It's like your favorite football team.
Yeah, exactly. It's stupid tribalist bullshit, and that's the way we like it.
Exactly. Which is why football fans drink and fight and eat, and metal fans drink and fight and eat much in the same manner, but dress differently.
Yep, hockey fans too.
Yep.
I would say hockey fans are certainly the most likely to throw down. I've actually been in a fight at the game,
Oh,
not even
cool.
on the ice. Like, obviously when you're playing, it's like that. But Bruins Canadiens games get pretty interesting
Yeah.
because those two teams hate each other. So I've actually been in a couple of scuffles in the crowd, which is
Damn.
always entertaining.
I was at my first fight at a show was at my first Metallica show, which is 2000, June 2000, Summer Sanitarium, Candlestick, San Francisco, when it was still Candlestick and it was still there.
Yep.
And people were drinking all around us, and my mom was brave enough to take me and my brother there amongst the crazies, and we got to enjoy it. Seeing Metallica with like Powerman 5000, Kid Rock played a great show, but yeah, I after seeing people just start randomly choking each other for no reason, I decided
Yeah,
not
that's
to
when it
drink
gets
it.
fun.
I decided, I probably shouldn't get drunk at concerts just in case.
Yeah, it depends on the show. Like if it's a small local show, I'll have a few, but like the bigger ones, it also depends on who I'm there to see. Like if it's like Priest or somebody, I'm getting one beer, going to the front, and I'm staying there.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, like especially a show like this where it's um more of the thrash stuff or like a hardcore punk show. Like I'm in the pit, so you cycle around the crowd as it is. You kind of come out of the pit wherever you come out, and then that's where you are.
Right.
But good to see you guys in chat. We got Soul Assassin as always, Christian Delorme, and yeah, today
Hey,
is our 50th episode of Rock and Roll Religion.
hail soul, hail Christian, and I would like to give the person standing to my right, his left. I would like to give him a big salute and thank you for his service to our country on this Memorial Day weekend. Thank you very much, sir.
Absolutely, man. And no, I mean, Memorial Day is always an interesting time for me because I didn't lose anybody overseas, but I obviously know a lot of guys that I've trained with and stuff like that. So it's an interesting day for me, an interesting weekend, and I'm glad to be part of it every year. I always try to get involved with the local veteran groups, planting flags on gravestones and stuff like that. So no, it's always a great weekend. And for those of you out there, Christian, I know you're Canadian. I think they have a Memorial Day too, but I think they combine it with Armistice Day. So that's like kind of it's all on November 11th. But for those of you out there in the U.S., happy Memorial Day. And hope you all have great weather for it because there's some beautiful weather out here right now. It's supposed to be like 90 on Monday. which
Damn, that's hot.
yeah, it's hot, but it's not really humid yet, so it's not bad. Hey
Okay.
Fizz, how's it going, man? And just to get into it, we'll get into the first record here and Field of Fire.
Yes.
This does not sound like a first output.
Wait a minute. That's the first record?
Yeah, this is 85.
Damn, I was using YouTube Music and they must have used a different cover, or I must have made a mistake. This is an amazing album.
Yeah, it is. This is their first record.
It was.
They've come out with a couple EPs and stuff like that before, but this is their first full-length album.
Yeah,
Hey, Joe's
incredible.
Atmosphere. Good to see you, man.
Canadians have Remembrance Day. That's right. Yep.
Yep. But yeah, this album for a first output is just absolutely savage. It feels hard. It's raw. It's very well produced for how low budget it was. And these guys, I think this is the first one is Megaforce Records, and then they got signed by Atlantic right after taking over. The next album came out because these guys were actually the first one of the big thrash bands to be signed by a major label, which I find hilarious because you had Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer all killing it by this point, and these guys are first. Yeah, it just always struck me as kind of interesting.
They got signed before Metallica did in '84.
Well, they got signed to a major label before anybody else. They got picked up by Atlantic.
Oh shit! Oh, okay. Because I know Metallica got picked up by Elektra in sometime in '84.
Was it '84? And Elektra
was before. It was like right before they released Ride the Lightning.
So that would have been 84, yeah.
That would have been 84, yeah.
But these guys got picked up by, Elektra's big, but Atlantic's one of the big boys.
Yeah.
They're up there with Sony Records.
At that time, yes, especially at that time.
Yeah, Atlantic.
Nobody know who the fuck Elektra Records were, really.
Yeah, Elektra Records kind of came up in the late 80s, early 90s.
Metallica made Elektra.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at that at all if Elektra kind of hitched their start to Metallica's career. And then they came out with their own label not too long ago, right?
Yeah, they bought all of their rights back to their music.
And I think that's No Remorse Records. That's them, right?
It's either No Remorse Records or Blackened Records.
Blackened, that's the one.
Blackened, yeah.
Because I was seeing the other day that Riot City is signed to No Remorse.
Okay, yeah, that's right. That's right, because I used No Remorse's website to buy Electric Elite from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll have to go dig through their catalog and see if I can't get myself some physical copies of that shit because that stuff's awesome.
Yeah,
we'll have to do an episode on Riot City one of these days because they only got 2 albums, but they're both phenomenal. But getting into these guys, these guys are actually showed off a lot of their influences on this first record, including a cover that they've been doing since 1980 when they formed.
Yeah,
it was actually their set closer in Tyrant by Judas Priest, which I thought was fucking fantastic. That first of all, I love that song, and second of all, these guys did a fantastic version of it.
I wish Priest played it more often.
They played it on the last tour.
Yeah, I know. That's right. I look up pro shot footage of it because I want to hear what it sounds like live by the band as it currently is.
They killed it, dude. They did a great job on it.
Oh, I'm sure they did because
too.
Yeah,
like these guys have been using it as their set closer for a number of years. I think since 1980. So obviously they're going to put it on the record, and used to do a ton of Motorhead covers and stuff like that. Obviously, naming their band after Motorhead's second album.
I mean, that's like the ultimate tribute right there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like we're not just going to cover your song. We're going to name our band after it,
right?
Which I think is kick ass, and another indication of just how much Motorhead influenced everything that came after. And they kind of had a similar influence in that they were influenced by the punk scene and by NWO BHM bands.
Yeah.
So they kind of like were in the same space as Motorhead, where they, thrash wasn't really a thing in 1980 yet.
No, it wasn't.
The sound was around with like Judas Priest and then Diamond Head and stuff like that. That sound had kind of been around, but it hadn't been perfected, and it certainly hadn't been named yet.
It hadn't been categorized as much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it was just a more hardcore heavy metal.
Right.
And I've always liked that about the East Coast bands is you can hear a lot more of the punk influence on, say Overkill or Anthrax,
Mm-hmm.
especially in their lyrical content, Nuclear Assault especially.
Mm-hmm.
Where who are all contemporaries of these guys. Nuclear Assault and Anthrax both came up in the same scene they did about the same time. Obviously Anthrax made it bigger than either of the other two, and Nuclear Assault actually wasn't around for very long. I think they called it quits in like 1995.
Yeah, most bands called it quits. If you started in the 80s, you called it quits in the early 90s.
Yeah, 90% of them did.
Just,
or they changed their sound and sold out like Metallica.
Yeah.
But no, like that was a really interesting time to be in the East Coast scene. I think Demolition Hammer was around towards the end of this period, like late 80s, early 90s
Mm-hmm.
was when they started. So
Mm-hmm.
they would have been just after these guys kind of made it big. And these guys were touring all over the world with, bands like I think they were in support of Slayer and a couple other people on a US tour in 87.
Overkill?
Overkill opened for, I think Overkill and Nuclear Assault opened for Slayer in 87 in the US.
What a fucking lineup that must have been.
Dude, that's like you have to go to the hospital after the show because you're just dead.
Yeah. I was watching.
All three are fast as fuck. All three are super aggressive. And
they're all young in their prime. They're all young in their prime. You have like
they're all probably late teens, early 20s.
And they're playing everything twice as fast.
Yeah. And the lineup on this one, like every single one of their musicians is fucking awesome. Blitz is fucking awesome behind the vocals. He throws a lot of Paul Di'Anno Iron Maiden vibes for me. Which, if you remember the first couple Maiden records, they were a lot more punk heavy than.
I didn't get that connection, but I can see where you see it. Kind of like how he accentuates certain words.
Yeah, and how he has that kind of operatic high note at the end of certain phrases. He really does phrase things similarly.
Yeah, the vocal things he'll do similarly, but actually the vocalist he kind of reminds me of is what's his name? He was in. Go on while I continue to think because I'm just having a brain fart right now. Sorry.
And yeah, Fizz, thrash metal's not for everybody, man. I mean, this is much more of a hardcore, punk-inspired type band where they're a lot more raw and aggressive than a lot of people give them credit for. So, like, there's different types of metal for just about everybody out there, man. But no, this album is just ridiculously good for a first effort. And then they followed up with their first big mainstream success in Taking Over, which, look at that album art and that Photoshop. Ooh.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I love the idea. It's just the execution.
Yeah. It's like it was a brilliant idea executed really poorly.
Yeah.
But either way, I mean, the album certainly outpaces the art because it's kind of basic. And this is the first time you see the wing skull show up.
Yeah. And when you start seeing that logo, that's when I start to really kind of like. Because I have this Overkill album that I listen to every once in a while. It's got that skull with laser, its eyes green lit up.
Years of Decay.
That's the one.
Well, yeah, that's the one after we're going to get to today. And I'll probably do another one on that by itself because that album's phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's probably their finest hour. But no, I mean, straight off the rip here, you have Deny the Cross, which is fucking awesome.
Yes. I mean,
Wrecking Crew is basically um, is their answer to Whiplash by Metallica.
they had a lot of answers to Metallica stuff, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, Metallica were the big boys in this scene at the time, and Lord Thoth, praise be, man, been a while. But yeah, it's I mean, but all of these albums, all of these songs are phenomenal. I think my favorite off of this record is probably Power Surge, which is just a straight up banger. And like you said, you can hear a lot of early Metallica and Anthrax in here.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's clear they were all cross pollinating at this point, and just kind of they were all listening to each other's stuff. And they right after this album is when they'd be signed by Atlantic Records because it still says Megaforce on here.
It
So
says,
this was
oh,
still
it
kind
says
of a small
Megaforce,
record.
and it also says Atlantic right above it.
Well, yeah, I think this is the reissue of it,
Reissue? Yeah.
so it would say Atlantic. Um, but initially it was on Megaforce, and then right after this, they got signed to Atlantic.
Hmm.
So that must have been an insane thing where like your album blows up and charts, and I think number 191 in the Billboard top 200,
I know.
and then Atlantic Records is beating down your door,
It's like,
and
dude,
you're on your
man,
second record.
if I was Rat Skates, I don't give a shit what was going on in my life. I don't care. I would have. You get a chance like that once in many many lifetimes.
Yeah, I
To
mean, and that's the music scene in general. Like when a label like Atlantic comes to you, it's pretty much like this is your shot. Do you want it or not?
and this was like his last album too.
Yeah, this was his last album with them. They got another drummer for the next one,
And
and it shows. The drumming style is very different.
yeah, it actually changed the way I thought about the music, to be honest.
And I will say the next album is a lot more varied, but we'll get to that.
Hmm.
This one's just pretty much straight ahead hardcore punk and thrash.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. This is
No,
a
no.
fun ass album to listen to. And one thing I like about these records is they're not very long. Each
True.
one, I think the first one is 40 minutes.
They don't. Well, they get to the point.
Yeah, and that's something to be admired where you can just get in, get out tracks of like 4 to 6 minutes and just keep it on going. I mean, let's face it. Well, Riot City's first album is what, like 28 minutes? Like none of the songs on that record are very long. It's
You
because
know
they don't
what?
have to be. I mean,
You're right. Actually, you're right. I bought it digitally, so that's why I didn't realize because I would listen to it in you know shuffle, so it couldn't tell how long it was. You know what I mean?
yeah. And then I know Bathory's first record was like 26 minutes, something like that. So they just got in, did their thing, and got out. It's also probably all the studio time they could afford.
Yeah.
So, and especially a first record, like, hey, if all you can do is 40 minutes and that's all you can afford, go for it.
Exactly.
I mean, it's all about getting the band out there. Like your first record is probably never going to be the one that blows up unless you're Guns N' Roses
Or Van Halen.
or Van Halen. Although that album, like, I think Van Halen was already signed to a fairly large
Oh,
label.
that's right. Gene Simmons discovered them. They were already set up for success. So
Yeah, so
it was going to sound fantastic no matter what they released.
yeah, and as far as marketing goes, well, if there's one thing Gene Simmons knows how to do, it is market.
Gene is whose idea was it to put blood in the Kiss comic book? Because
I don't know. That had to be Gene.
that had to be Gene.
He's the only one who's out there enough to probably have done that. I don't see Paul Stanley or Ace really making that call.
Yeah, he can provocateur a little bit. He knows how to instigate a little bit.
Yeah, Ace Spaceman. I haven't seen you before. Welcome to it, man.
Hail Ace.
We are just going through some of Overkill's early output, and I had a lot of fun listening to this series of records.
Yeah. Yes, according to Dio, he did.
Yep.
And he
But
actually does own the trademark to OJ.
yeah, man. I mean, but Van Halen, I mean, especially Eddie's guitar work just sells itself.
Yes.
Like you don't even need to really like, push people into it. Just play Eruption a couple of times. Everyone's gonna run out and buy it. Um, but no, these guys were really honestly not overnight sensations, but pretty much as soon as they started out, I mean, Feel the Fire did pretty well, and
Hmm.
then this charted in the top 200. So, and this is the '80s when the top 200 actually meant something.
Exactly.
Like,
And you
yeah,
had
it sounds kind of like a backhanded compliment at this point, but like
no,
being
it's not.
191 on the top 200 in 1987 was a huge fucking deal.
Fucking A.
Like
Fucking
that
A.
meant out of the thousands of albums that got released that week,
And
yours
this is the 80s.
was number 191.
This is the 80s where everybody in every genre of music was releasing classic after classic after classic each fucking week.
Yeah, just when you look at 1987, there were some serious freaking records coming out of there.
I'm not surprised.
Like
Whew.
some bands were putting out classic material that they would never top in some ways. This was the height of the golden age of heavy metal.
Hmm.
And like we were talking about backstage, you had multiple different styles of metal that were that were super popular at this time. You had the glam metal stuff that the normies loved,
Hmm.
and some of them were actually pretty good. I like me some Dokken, mostly for George Lynch, but
I like Duncan. I got into in the mid 2000s because the songs were just too good. Good. They were too hooky, man.
yeah,
Breaking the
they were
chains,
super catchy.
and I kick myself because it's kind of like you hide your. It's like you come out of your not. It's like coming out of the closet almost, like and it's, in a way, it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
I love Dawkins, I love Striper.
yeah,
Fuck
right,
you, I don't care.
right. And for a long
Tired
time,
of
it
pretending.
wasn't okay to like either one of those bands. And you know what? They're pretty fantastic. Hell, Striper's last album, The Final Battle, was on my top 3 of 2022
That's right.
because it's a phenomenal record, and it's great to see that those guys are back and can still perform at that level. And a lot of bands are like that. Overkill's new record absolutely kills.
Oh my God, yes, that is just just thrash from front to back,
With a little bit of prog
100%.
rock mixed in there because they do have a few interesting time signatures and a few transitions in there that are pretty interesting. And that would come in on the next record where they would start experimenting musically a little more. And I think it has a lot to do with their new drummer.
Hmm.
Whereas Rat Skates was just pretty much just blast beat, fast paced, double bass drum,
Yeah,
which
hardcore
for a
punk
thrash
drummer.
band is fucking great. That's exactly what you
Yeah,
need.
exactly. That's Louis Clemente. That's
Yeah.
wait, is that the? Am I thinking of the right guy? Louis, yeah, of Testament. That's Charlie Benante. That's Dave. That's the guy you need to get you to the sonically where you need to get to.
Yeah.
Because
And
without the bombastic rhythm section, eh, what
that's
the fuck?
the hallmark of a true thrash band is that booming rhythm section that's just cutting through all of it.
Yes,
And
pounding you.
then Ace is right too, where if you were on the PMRC's Filthy 15 list, like that was like a badge of honor.
Hmm. That's right.
It's the same thing when we were growing up in the '90s. Like you knew if you saw a parental advisory label on the album, it was good.
Or if you
Sometimes they
knew,
were wrong, but
or if you knew that like a politician hated a particular video game, you had to play that video game.
why do you think GTA became so popular? Nobody had really heard of it before. What's his face there started. Was it Jack Thompson started
I
railing against it?
I was going to go back even further and say Bob Dole in Mortal Kombat or
Oh
something.
yeah, oh yeah. Mortal Kombat was really the first big one.
And that's hilarious because the way they did the violence is the way you should be doing that kind of over the top violence with
Yeah.
tongue in cheek humor. If you take it too seriously, you get kind of what you get today, where it just kind of looks like.
Well, I mean, it's just more evidence of what we already knew. People in government don't have a sense of humor.
They don't.
It's surgically removed when they make the decision to run for office.
Just disgusting people. Totally disgusting people with too much power and too much influence.
And not enough apparently not enough real world problems to worry about that they have to start bothering things like, heavy metal and video games. Just like,
Yeah, ain't that a bitch? I wish the universe could kind of like adjust itself, like cosmically, and like send a lot of bad things their way if they're doing that kind of shit to our music and our entertainment.
yeah, right. It's one of the whenever you hear something like that, it's like, oh, that's a shame. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Oh well, anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, you got hit by a car? Oh, that's too bad.
Is the car okay?
Is the car okay? Oh yeah, it might have been like a Stingray or
yeah, it might have been something rare or valuable.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, yeah, Soul Assassin, you're absolutely right. When you walk into that store and you see those stickers on there, it's just like that one right there. Because they're pissing off all the right people, just like we are. But yeah, going into this third record, which Under the Influence, again, you see the Batwing.
This is where I start. As far as my Overkill listening went, when I was binging, I was like, "This is the fucking album."
Yeah, this one's pretty tight.
Tight. What's the song? If you flip the to the back with the track listing.
I actually don't have the back for this one.
I'll look up the track listing then.
Yeah, I got it pulled up over here. Hang on one second. Here we go. We got Shred, Never Say Never, Hello from the Gutter,
Hello from the Gutter,
World, Bring and Fade, Drunken Wisdom, which I really like because it's kind of a slower paced one from them, but heavy as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
And then End of the Line, Head First, and then Overkill 3.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's a hell of a lineup. Everything on this record slaps.
Yeah.
And there's like a couple of dips here and there, like early on, Never Say Never kind of grew on me. But like it wasn't my favorite track out of there. But Hello from the Gutter is fucking awesome.
Yeah. That's my absolute favorite off of that.
Shred is a fucking brilliant intro.
Yeah.
Just fast, aggressive, out of control. And you still hear that blast beat coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even more aggressive than their earlier stuff. So it's like, oh, okay. And then slows down a little bit and gets a little more melodic. So
it made me think. I was like, wait a minute. Did I mistakenly like not listen to these albums in the order of which they were released?
They got heavier and faster as they went.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is kind of the opposite of most bands, where they kind of calm down towards the middle of their career.
Well, it reminded me of the kind of like hardcore punkish, kind of almost sloppy but fast and heavy. Drumming that did.
Yeah, almost that like black metal, like just
rawness. Yes, like black metal drummers.
They're not really trying to scrub anything out. It's just kind of, garage band style.
Right.
Where what you get is what we played.
Right.
And I do love that sound especially for these guys, because like you say, they come from the punk scene where that's pretty much, at this point anyway, what everybody goes for is that raw, authentic live sound. Mm-hmm. Which, I've seen bands go both ways. Even in the thrash scene, Exodus kind of went more produced.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds phenomenal. And I think it's all a decision on what the attitude of the band is and where they're at in their headspace for these kind of records.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I've seen the West Coast bands tend to be a lot more produced, and the East Coast guys tend to be really raw and more punk inspired.
Yeah, that's a good observation.
Because right alongside this, Nuclear Assault released their big one in '88. And I forget what's the name of that.
I'll know the cover when I see it, but I forget the name.
The one with the two smokestacks?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. But that's from 1988. And sorry, I'm blanking on the name right now. But and that's super fast and very, very raw. it sounds like it was a live recording, and that's one thing I've always loved about the thrash scene is you'll get a little bit of everything.
True.
And this is their first real album where you hear a lot of the progression and a lot of the more technical side of Overkill, whereas before they're just more aggressive.
Right.
And I
You
think
could put
Slayer was starting to do the same thing about this time, where their first two were almost black metal,
uh
and then towards Rain and Blood and
they kind of
um,
streamline
yeah, they kind of
the
streamlined it and kind of not mellowed out because they're still stupid fast, but really kind of varied it a little more.
yeah.
And I thought that was, and that's kind of where thrash was going at the time. Is a lot of them were young kids. Some of them had only been playing an instrument for a couple of years,
Yeah.
so they weren't super experts in their field yet. So I think as you get older, you kind of learn more tricks, especially when you tour with guys like Slayer and Metallica.
It's going to rub off on you because you're going to want to not look like the weakest of the bands you're touring with.
Yeah,
Trust me.
and if somebody's playing some sick shit, like after the show, you're gonna sidle up to a guy like Kirk Hammett or Gary Holt or whoever, and just go, dude, how did you play that? That's fucking awesome.
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
I mean, like that's one of those. If you know, ask.
They're more than willing
Look
to
at
tell
it.
you. Usually they're more than willing to tell you.
Yeah, they're more than happy to tell you because they're just guitar nerds too. So they're just
Right.
absolutely great. So they're just like, oh, you like that? Cool. Here's how I did it. Now, like, yeah, and then like watch you like do your variation on it, and then like kind of like, oh yeah. That's always fun is jamming with another guy. And for episode 69, I'll have to think about what I want to do for that because that's going to be a special one.
Or
That's going to be a bit.
I know the first goddamn band that's going to be on that list, and they're one of my favorite bands of all time too. And I love them to death.
Who's that?
Metallica.
Oh yeah. I mean that's the obvious choice of hey, remember when you did those first 5 albums and they were great, and then nothing, then nothing happened. They went on vacation for 20 years. Stop asking questions.
Yes, exactly. Nothing happened. It got memory.
They went away and never released an album ever again.
They got lost in Russia.
Yeah, well, I mean that happens to a lot of bands though. Like we shit on Metallica for it, but let's face it, the Stones really didn't release anything good after '76 with "Sympathy for the Devil."
That's true.
A lot of
what's the one they did with that had started up on it? Something
I think that was "Sympathy for the Devil." That was later, or that was that same album.
I like that. At least I like the production of that album, and I do like that song.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying they didn't have individual songs that were good after that, but as far as whole albums go, it's just like you guys are kind of falling off.
Yeah.
And I was still willing to give them the benefit of the doubt until that Super Bowl halftime show. And what was that, 2005?
Oh shit! I don't even remember.
Yeah, it was bad. The audio was shit. They played horribly. It was bad, dude.
Damn it, man.
And that was one of those like, oh, that's the death of a legend right there.
It's like, well, it's a missed opportunity also because it's like they let the shittiest of shitty artists play the Super Bowl halftime show. That's for men amongst men. That is a sacred entertainment hallowed ground where
that is like, especially for a band that's trying to make it, like that is a spotlight you will never see again.
Right. Prince, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston. Wait, not Whitney Houston? Did she do the Super Bowl?
I think she did, yeah.
Her. Who else?
Bon Jovi. 2001.
Bon Jovi, U2. When the spotlight was on, they delivered the goods.
Yeah, I mean, U2, I'm not a big fan of, but especially with the 9/11 tribute, they fucking knocked it out of the park.
I completely agree. I loved it. And I'm sure you loved the ending to that Super Bowl too.
Oh God, yes. That was our first Super Bowl win, and I was absolutely fucking elated. Because remember, we went in '97 and got the living shit kicked out of us by Green Bay.
Oh, I remember that. I was pissed
I
because
mean, there's only so
Green
much you could
Bay.
do. You ran into Brett Favre in his prime.
Oh my God, that motherfucker owes us like 4 rings.
Although,
Thank you for
I
beating the
think karma
Rams,
came
though.
back around for us because then we had Tom Brady, and he became the next one of those. Like I remember
But,
one year, I think it was the Dolphins made the playoffs too. They were the wild card for the AFC,
oh yes,
and
sure.
they were like super excited that they made the playoffs, and we're just sitting there like, don't get too comfortable. You're facing us in the first round.
Exactly. I mean, I have a begrudging respect for Tom Brady because he grew up a Niner fan,
Yeah.
and he prevented the Seahawks from becoming a
Well,
dynasty.
and he tried to join the 49ers.
Oh
They
my
didn't
God!
even want to look at
Don't
him.
remind me. Don't remind me because the fucking idiot owner totally ignored it, and
Well, I mean,
our
on
coach is
paper,
an
he
idiot.
wasn't a good candidate. That's why he went at the end of the sixth round, and then just happened to.
No, I thought you were talking about 2020 when we had an opportunity to get him in 2020 before he joined the
No, they had an
Buccaneers.
opportunity to draft him in I think '99.
Oh my God!
He sent them his tapes and everything, and they didn't even want to talk to him. And New England was the only one that wanted him.
I
So
swear to God.
there's something to
Since
be
Super
said for
Bowl
hindsight.
29, the 49ers have caused me nothing but grief. That's
Yeah. Well, you had to pay for having Joe Montana and then Steve Young in a row at some point.
true.
So every team has that legendary period, and then if you're lucky, you get another one later.
Yeah. You had three. You had three different dynasties.
That is true.
What the fuck?
Well, yeah, I mean, all of our sports teams have been the best in their sport at some point.
It wasn't
New
right
England's just like that now.
that you won the World Series before the Cubs. I'm just glad because nobody who seen the Cubs
Well,
win the last World
here's a
Series
little
were
known fact
alive
too.
to see that.
The Red Sox may not have won a World Series for 86 years in a row, but we won the first World Series
Fair enough.
in
Fair
1903.
enough. Fair enough.
So that was one of those there are guys out there who have more World Series wins than us. The Yankees have a lot more, but we won the first one. So that's always a special moment. And then when it comes to basketball, the freaking Celtics have won more than anybody else.
Please, make just so that I can all of the sports YouTubers that I watch who are Boston fans can just have their flowers and laugh at all the shit talking that's been going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, especially too when they start talking about like, oh, LeBron James, whoever. It's like all the Celtics fans are like, have you never heard of Larry Bird or Bill Russell?
Right, exactly.
Like, those guys were absolute monsters. Especially in the '80s, like Lakers Celtics games used to get fucking interesting. Like back when physical contact was allowed in basketball.
Yep.
Those guys used to go to war out there. That was back when basketball was fun to watch.
Yeah, it was.
But no, I mean, I have to run here pretty soon. I have one little other surprise for you. If you'll vamp for me for a second, I will be right back.
All right. So yeah, I would totally recommend listening to Under the Influence, or what you could do is get their best of or something decade of decadence, and it covers all. It's like a compilation album from like '84 to '97 of some of their best stuff. Uh, with kind of late '90s, early 2000s analog remastering tech to it, so it doesn't sound too digitally. Because a lot of remasters now sound way too overcompressed and digital, while not being loud enough in certain places. So definitely check that out. And yeah, shout out to Bobby Blitz, Rat Skates, Bobby. Is it Bobby Gustafsson, the guitar player?
Yeah.
He looks exactly like James when he has a handlebar mustache.
Yeah, he does. Like it's funny. Like the '80s thrash guys all look very similar. But
and he uses an Explorer too.
We have another member of the channel joining us. Please welcome to my new family member, Mr. Finn. I got myself a puppy last week, so well,
Hi, Fen.
you say hi? No. He's still in that phase where he's getting adjusted to things, so he's just like,
Shy.
oh, all right, guys. Well, Sentinel, what do you got going on for this week, man?
I'm still super busy with other stuff, so you'll probably still see me post some rants on Twitter. But other than that, you can catch me on my channel on YouTube, the Sentinel 831 on Twitter, and the Sentinel 43 on Instagram.
Absolutely, man, and absolutely go check his channel out. He posts out some pretty cool stuff, especially old Star Wars EU content, which
I
I'm always a fan of.
I just got a clip back from a friend who had a channel. Long story short, he was doxxed. He lost this clip. It's this clip of Christopher Reeve and Michael Keaton acting in a scene together,
Oh
and
wow,
it was something that like that, like Batman fans
I
and
saw that.
Superman
I
fans.
saw that clip the other day. I didn't realize like that was a really cool one.
That was from his old channel that he got that was shut down.
Yeah, that was some good stuff.
So I was so happy to have been able to get it back up on there. So, shout out to him.
Yeah, that was a great that was a great find. And as for me, you can find me here every Sunday, Mondays on 70s Rock Fans channel for It's Only Talk and Roll. I think we're back next week. 70s was on vacation, so we've had a couple weeks off. And then this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, barring any unforeseen circumstances, we'll be doing another random fandom stream on BattleTech. So that'll be a freaking great time. And then other than that, I'll see you guys back here next week. Take care. Stay safe. I love you all. And I'll catch you next time.